Welcome to DEIJ Hot Takes. My name is Daryl Sinclair, and this is the podcast where we discover the bold and transformative ideas shaping diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work today. In this episode, we are joined by Mary Rice-Boothe, who is the founder of Leading Within, LLC, and also the equity officer at the NYC Leadership Academy. And many of you will know her from her brilliant book, Leading Within Systems of Inequity in Education. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Daryl.
No worries. Could you please share with us the DEIJ hot take that guides your work?
Yes, the DEIJ practitioners do not have to be magical or superhuman in order to be able to do their work.
Thank you. That's an excellent point to raise. Hopefully, upon listening, people will feel a bit more empowered to get involved with this work. So could you please take us through what this means in the context of DEIJ work, why this is a hot take, and how you address this in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have seen this a lot, and I will speak to the U.S. context in particular, the fact that a lot of DEIJ practitioners are the sole practitioners, the sole people in this role within their school systems, and they're expected to basically unravel 400 years of some systemic oppression in the U.S. On their own. And that in order to be able to do that, they are required to do things above and beyond who they are, and then they have the capacity to do. And so I want to make sure that people recognize the fact that we didn't get, first of all, it wasn't our fault that we got here, right? And it's not our sole responsibility to do this on our own. We need to do our work in coalition, and the coalition needs to also include everyone from all backgrounds, ethnicities, and races in order to be able to actually break down the systemic barriers that have been put in place before us, and then it takes all of us to be able to actually get it done, not just people who have the title or D, E, I, or J to be able to do the work.
I mean, it's great to hear this idea of coalition. I mean, it's very much the community building that we need to see outside of perhaps labels such as racial labels, gender labels, so on and so forth. So what I've seen in work is how even people who are at least on the surface appear to be allies. And also the people who seem to genuinely oppose equity work, they use this superhuman narrative, this idea that it's impossible or magical work to do, to prevent engaging at all with explicit equity work. Where have you seen that in some of the work that you've done personally, and how do you challenge that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of like, how do you break down the work and the actions so that it's actually manageable, right? So it's like, how are we helping people be able to understand what are the everyday actions that I can take in order for it to then largely build up to actually systemic change, and for make sure that people are understanding that no matter what my role is, that I have a responsibility of it. So if I am over operations, right, or I'm over finance, yes, I need to understand like how is money moving, and what are the kind of what are the questions I can ask myself in order to think how money's moving. If I'm responsible for transportation, how am I actually approaching the way that we are doing transportation in a really equitable way, right? And then as a teacher, how am I doing this in my classroom, right? So recognizing the fact that no matter what my role is, I have responsibility, and it is something that I have to do every single day. Like I can't just do it like, during my professional development and do it right after the day after. It's like something I'm working on every day, and then it doesn't stop. Right. So for me as a Black woman, like my work around equity doesn't stop because the day is over. It is something that I'm working on 7 days a week because it's part of who I am. So how do we asking for everyone else to ensure the fact that like how I show up in the world and interact in the world is in through a space of making sure that everyone around me is having a very similar and equitable experience.
I thank you so much for making that so clear. I think with conversations I've had recently, there are people who are doing brilliant work. They have responsibilities within their communities, but they don't view themselves as a DEI lead or expert or anything like that. But it's the understanding that no matter what work you do, if you have responsibility or you have power, we might say broadly, to
Right.
change things, you can influence the access people have to whatever it is you're responsible for. And that is an act of
Exactly.
equity. That's an act of inclusion. That's an act responding to diversity. Um, Based on our conversation earlier and referring to your wonderful book, I was wanting to ask, when we speak about the superhuman element, where we think they're these people who are doing so much work, what do you think the role of systems and updating and improving systems, what do you think the role of that is in removing this barrier of it being superhuman?
Yeah. I mean, I always say that my job as equity officer, I'm not the person who's going to be breaking down systems, but I'm the person who's going to be holding up the mirror
Mhm.
to everyone else so they understand how they are actually responsible for breaking down that system as well, right? So it's like, how am I just being the person that's reflecting back to you? What is it you are or are not doing? Asking the
Mhm.
question, saying the thing that nobody else wants to say in order for then everybody else to have to respond to that. And so then okay, so now how are we going to do this work together, right? And so I think that's that important, especially if you're in a leadership role. You have you can't not just you can't just work on yourself, right? Like you can't just like be like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I figure out, like you're responsible for a system at the same time, and you're gonna have to figure out how to balance, like in my journey to racial consciousness, I am also like very clearly dismantling and recreating systems that is in best service of the students I'm here to serve, particularly those that have been the most minoritized. And so I think that's the work of somebody that may be in a DIJ role, is not to do the work, but to just be the mirror in order to ensure that we are collectively doing the work.
Yeah, I like how you position your work there. So you are holding up the mirror to enable the organization or the community to see what they're doing, how they're dressing themselves, how they're presenting themselves so that they can make changes to it and you can support them in that journey.
Yeah.
So what I like to do towards the end of the episodes is just to try and, with all the brilliant things you've said so far, what would be perhaps a key takeaway for our listeners? It might be a resource, it might be your book, or perhaps an idea that they can take away with them as they continue to do their work, whether as a school leader or even other members of the school community who might be trying to make things more equitable.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously I have to say that I think reading my book will help anyone, particularly if you consider yourself a leader of color, a leader of the global majority, to be able to kind of think about what your work is. But I think it is also about the fact of like, what am I doing every day? Right. So like being super clear about like when I wake up this today, like what's going to be the thing that I'm going to work on or practice or try to do in order to be able to show up differently for the students that I'm here to serve. And I think that is creating a daily practice and a daily kind of reflection about how you're doing, I think is something that's really critical. And I can't tell you what that daily practice is because I don't know your context. I don't know what is it that you're bringing to the space, but I know that you can do something differently every day. But you're gonna have to figure that out in regards to what is it the work that you are going to do, because I think like you can read all the books in the world, you can do all the kind of challenges, but if you're actually not in the space of action, we're basically having the same conversation in 20 to 40 to 50 years. So.
Yeah. So reflecting on what am I doing each day to move towards these goals that I have. Ah, well, thank you so much for that key takeaway and for giving your time today. For our listeners, I will place links in the description where you can connect with Mary and explore her ideas and her work. Thank you for watching or for listening, and I will see you on our next episode of DEIJ Hot Takes. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.